So, why are we here? All right. I'll start out with a little story, and then we'll go into it. Back in 1979, when I was a second class in the Navy, I got my first shore duty order to go teach. All right. I was teaching in military sea school, and first I had to go to IST school where they taught us learning objectives and how to prepare a lesson guide and all that stuff. I got up for my first class, thought I was ready. Student asked me a question. I didn't know the answer. I made up some fairy tale. All right? I swore to never let that happen again. All right, so from that point on, I made sure I put myself in the student's seat and said, what is that student, when he reads this paragraph, what is that student going to say? What is he going to ask me? And I made sure I could answer every single question that could possibly be asked. I fell in love with teaching that. And I knew that eventually, when I retired, when I was John's age, all right, that's what I wanted to do, was teach. I got to that a lot sooner than I expected, because when I got laid off, then I said, okay, let me find something to do. And I said, okay, well, let me apply to a few schools to start teaching. I started here at Coleman, I think in March of 2012, and within 2 months, I fell in love with teaching, and I said, screw the rat race, never again. Right? I fell in love with it, all right, which is why I made myself good at it. We have probably, I would say, and this is just from what I've seen over the past 6 years, not only here, but at National in Phoenix, probably about 5 to 10% of the students who come to higher education, all right, are there, and we don't have to work with those students, all right? They're going to excel. There's probably, and especially in this technical arena, there's probably about 5 to 10% of the students who we are not going to reach, no matter how hard we try. Right? And a lot of those, probably about half of those are the students who they'll come to class, but they won't do anything outside of the class. Okay? So we have to focus our attention on that remaining 80%. All right? Now, no matter where you go, all right, and the students will tell you, the students will always say that there are bad teachers. Why is that? All right? Anybody have a clue why that is? Why are there bad teachers?
Teachers are not, they've got one style. They don't realize that there's as many styles there are students, and you got to be able to reach the majority of the students.
Yes, that is a very important one. But there's even something more important than that.
A lot of the times they can't explain the information at a level that the student needs.
And what
They
contributes
have
to that?
one way of explaining it. You need, I've got 10 for half the things that I do.
And what contributes to that?
No training.
That is it. All right? Schools hire teachers, professors to teach, but rarely are they taught how to teach. Rarely. In fact, I held about a year ago, I had a town hall for students. And students are under the impression that instructors are trained to teach. I had to tell them, no, all it takes is a piece of paper. You can go to any school, as long as you have a master's degree, you can go to any school and teach. All right? Rarely is there any training conducted. All right? So that's why we're here. We have to keep that 80% of population that we have to work on, because every time an instructor loses one, that's tens of thousands of dollars that's walking out the door. And if each one of us could save at least one student in every class, then we're doing our job. All right? So we need to start teaching everyone, all right, how to make that classroom experience better. for that 80% of the population that we need to attend to. All right? So that starts out with simple things. All right? What do we do in the classroom to make our side better? Because we're talking 50-50. We have to come halfway, that student has to come the other half of the way. Both of us have to participate in that learning process. All right, so for this, if we take a look, we're going to be here for 10 sessions. All right? What are we going to be doing in these 10 sessions? All right, the purpose, we leave the description. This course aims to develop and strengthen faculty's understanding of our student population. All right, no matter where you go. All right, I teach here, I teach Phoenix, and I teach National, and all three populations are totally different. All right, so I can't do what I do here that I do at National or Phoenix, all right, because they're all three different environments. And use that understanding towards improvement of learning and thereby retention, all right? We'll focus on classroom pedagogy and assessment, all right? Not only do we not have, or we have very little to no assessment, all right, as far as the programs or courses are concerned, but we don't take a look really at what's going on in the classroom. All right? And that's where we don't have to wait for an assessment program to be developed. Each one of us can do that individual classroom assessment. All right, so we need to start that. The objectives or the outcomes. Examine different student learning styles and how to tailor instruction to help students of all learning styles. All right? Again, like was mentioned, every student is going to learn differently, especially since we're all mostly dealing in technology. That's a totally different animal. We have to do different things in teaching technology than, for instance, teaching humanities or sociology. Use diverse resources to support effective teaching. Design syllabi and lesson plans that align objectives, methods, and assessments. Creating motivating and engaging learning environments, all right, to keep those students off of Facebook, all right, or whatever else they're doing in the back of the class. Use technology to enhance teaching and learning and assess achievement of learning objectives. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing over the next 10 weeks. As you can see, by going to scroll down, in today's session we're going to talk about why we are here, why we're educating, and then our mode of operation, or our mode of admissions, open enrollment. All right, that plays an important part to the environment that we have here at Coleman. That makes us different, all right, from a Phoenix or a National or a Grossmont. All right. In session 2, we're going to talk about adult learning styles, how to recognize and how to adapt to those different learning styles, all right? Because while we may be hitting one half of the classroom, we may be alienating another half of the classroom. We have to bring that entire community together. We're going to learn how to use assessment to address attention, retention, the difference between teaching and learning. Again, a review of Bloom's taxonomy. What we did last year, while Ethan was addressing assessment, Jason had a little splinter group off to the side where he was addressing classroom stuff. That should not have been two separate efforts. They should have been tied together. All right? So the attempt here is to tie those two things together. Assessing syllabi to determine the degree of learning centeredness. All right, we want that classroom to be focused on that student. Lesson plans, how to create and use Bloom's technology in the classroom and in your lesson plans. Assessing in-class activities, labs, and assessing homework and projects, and also feedback. Where did I get the outline for this course? I sat down, myself, Travis, Dominic, Ryan Willingham, we all sat down together and culminated all of the things that we do in all of the places that we teach. All right, we gathered up all of the good things and all of the bad things. All right? So that's where the outline of this course came Any questions so far?
Is this an employee web class?
This is an employee web class. There was, for Ethan's, there was PD1, Professional Development 1, so right under it, you should see Professional Development 3, which is this. All right?
Is it open to staff as well, when they join your sessions, and do you have weekly sessions?
It
or
should be available to
monthly
anyone who
sessions?
has a Coleman account, but I'll make sure that it's open to staff.
And then you have sessions every week here?
Every week,
You call to discuss?
every week they're gonna be here, sessions here. And for those folks who cannot attend, Doug will be recording at least one of the sessions, and that will be posted up on web class.
I only see one class there, though.
I sent an email to Trina this morning. I didn't want everybody to start looking at what was there first before we started. So I sent an email this morning to Trina to have her open it up. Okay, Sarah is going to give us a presentation on, again, most of our population, open enrollment, and those first family college attendees, right? Because that's again, that is our population that we have.
Okay. Yeah, hello, everybody. It's nice to see all of you. I don't think I need to introduce myself. I know all of you. That means that you know me. So I see one familiar face. I'm Sarah Kirish. And, sorry, what is your name?
John Schulte.
John Schulte, yes. Yes, I've seen your name for a very long time, so it's very nice to meet you. Thank you. Okay, Bill talked about our population and the challenges that they have, and he asked me to provide a presentation on who our population is. So I have to thank him for giving me this opportunity, because this is my favorite area, and that's one of the areas that I did a lot of research on when I was a student at USD. It's the area that I have a lot of passion. So the presentation that I have is focused on non-traditional students and breaking down barriers and building opportunities for non-traditional students. But before, let me go over the presentation overview before I start the presentation. So the presentation has three parts. The first part will provide a definition of non-traditional student population, and then we will identify a continuum for non-traditional students based on their characteristics. We examine post-secondary persistence and degree attainment among non-traditional students. Part 2 talks about barriers, and I am using a cross theory of response model for adult learners. And part 3 talks about the strategies to decrease, to break down the barriers and build opportunities for non-traditional students. Before I start the presentation, are you familiar with the term non-traditional? What do you know about non-traditional students? What are the most common characteristics of non-traditional students? Now,
They're older, they're working,
older, and
and these are all in general, but they're generally older and they're generally working.
what do you mean by older? Or older than?
Then if we think of.
Traditional students.
Yeah, like a lot of colleges have people from high school, 18, they're like they graduate at 21. But we have people sometimes decades older than that, sometimes just years, but the average age is much higher.
Okay, okay.
And then working some regular, like state university, whatever, a lot of those students work part-time, odd time. A lot of our folks are working full-time.
Working part-time, full-time, they are older students. What else do we know about this population? Tom?
I'd say any student that hasn't taken the traditional path, where they go to high school and then they go to, right out of high school to a university, which is typically what you think of as a student. So anybody who falls out of that would be not traditional.
Immediate college enrollment, you mean? So
Yeah,
it
I
is
mean,
very
they follow
common.
high school with the university education right the next year. So if they, like, got diverted to the military, that would account for a lag in their education. If they change careers and decide to come and get a different degree, that would be non-traditional.
It's a very good point you made about non-traditional students. Non-traditional students are more likely to get involved in military, in working full-time or part-time, right after finishing high school. And this is something common about non-traditional students. What else do we know about them? Yes, Dr.
Students generally have a lower level of esteem, thinking that they're not traditionally a part of the upper echelon of high school graduates that go directly to a four-year institution. So you have to kind of account for maybe a slower learner. I'm not saying that they're worse, I'm not saying they're bad, it's just that they have a certain speed of learning. Just, we have to kind of know, understand about that.
So they have learning challenges.
Learning challenges. Probably better.
So who may be classified as non-traditional students? Can someone read this list for me? I know that you're eating, it's difficult.
I'm gonna eat it.
Yes, Jean, please.
Veterans, adult learners, students with disabilities, low-income students, single parents, married students, high school dropouts, GED students, transfer students, displaced homemakers, homeless students, underrepresented minorities, distance learners, commuters, English as a second language students, undocumented students, students from foster care, financially independent students, first-generation college students, students with financial dependence, and reentry students.
Why do you think reentry student is in this category of non-traditional students? What is most common about reentry students? What happens that?
I was
yes,
a reentry student. I started college when I was 30, so we tend to be older, we tend to have previous careers.
Yes, coming back from a
Something
gap.
else, yeah.
Exactly. How many of you have encountered these students, this population in your classes? Can you give us an example, give me an example of your interaction? Would you remember about that particular student? Was there a particular situation about that student that you remember, Letitia?
Well, I remember I had somebody who was actually homeless, and he had some learning disabilities, and so he had problems in, a lot of subjects, and so I told him to make an appointment with me, just sit there and tutor him, and so he chose to come on Friday, and out of all the subjects, he chose math. So, and I'm not a math teacher, but I'm glad I kind of remembered it.
Thank you. So were you able to communicate what you had found out about this student to the non-academic department, let's say student services?
No, we didn't.
Were we able to provide support for this student who was homeless and also had learning disabilities outside the classroom, obviously?
No, because, well, I communicated, I think, I don't know if Jen was my dean at the time, I can't remember, but I remember I think I mentioned, I can't remember. But, yeah, I think I was just like the first hire, so I didn't really know what I was supposed to do.
Okay. Well, yes.
One of the things that I do that falls under the category of good academic practice, start of any course, you introduce yourselves, name, how old you are, or why are you here? And the reasons fall, all those listings there, they come from, all those listings are representative of why they're there. And so, as you get to know who your students are, that tailors, you can then customize your, and tailor your teaching methods to try to reach the maximum number of students. But if you don't do that, you have no idea what your students are,
Exactly.
and that one style you normally use may not be appropriate for your class.
For the class, for your students.
That's just a comment.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
Anthony.
For me, I used to have a lot more veteran students before, and what happens is that they have a lot of training or they have to be deployed. I realized I have to be more flexible in the schedule, so I have to adjust, keep them up to date, what's due and what's not. But I think that in that sense, those non-traditional students would imply us as instructor to be more flexible in figuring out their
Flexibility.
schedule, yeah.
So understanding our student population, flexibility, and also connecting the student to appropriate resources on campus if we have any. Definition of non-traditional student, as Jean mentioned, they are typically over age of 25, and one of the 7 characteristics is present with this population. So the first one, as Tom mentioned, is that immediate college enrollment does not happen with non-traditional students because they immediately need to get engaged in some sort of part-time, full-time work because they are financially independent and they need to be able to pay for their life. So beyond a year of high school gap is usually common among non-traditional students. Long-term post-secondary part-time enrollment. They are part-time student for a very long time. It is because they have different responsibilities, they are working, and it does not allow them to finish their degree in a timely manner. Full-time employment. I am sure that the majority of our students, one of the challenges that we can offer classes during the day is because most of our students are working during the day for more than 35 hours a week. They are classified as financially independent for financial aid purposes. They are on their own. They are responsible for their life. So financially, they need to be able to make money to be able to come to school part-time or full-time. And financially supporting dependents, they are either single parents, they have siblings, they have parents, disabled parents that they have to take care of, or they are single parents. As I mentioned, we had a student, I believe in graphics, that she was a single mom and she had childcare problem. She was not able to find someone to take care of her child, which is why I think she wasn't able to complete her degree. And lacking a traditional high school diploma. And this is really one of the things that is very common among our population, most of our students. The population that come to us usually they have GED, but they have a lot of challenges in getting their GED. The continuum for non-traditional students is that we have students who have one of those 7 characteristics that was mentioned in the previous slide. They are at minimum risk of dropping out from high school. If 2 or 3 characteristics are present with this population, they are at moderate risk. And if they have 4 or more characteristics, then they are at high risk. And then if all of those 7 characteristics are present with that particular student, then the student is beyond the margin and is considered at a very high risk of dropout. Persistence and degree attainment among non-traditional students has been a huge challenge for higher education. Persistence after 3 years for non-traditional students, pretty much after 3 years, 50% of highly at-risk students are not going to be enrolled. They have dropped out from school for some reason. And 62% of the students, highly at-risk students at a 2-year college will drop out. Degree attainment after 4 or 5 years, 31.3% of non-traditional students usually complete the program, and the rest they drop out. As you can see, it's 11.2% for the students who are at very high risk, the ones that have all the characteristics that were mentioned in the previous slide. The U.S. Census Bureau shows gap in degree attainment for 25 to 29-year-old Black and Hispanic underrepresented students 40% the degree attainment among white students, 40% where it is only 23% among black students and 15% among Hispanic students. Asian and Pacific Islanders, obviously, they have a higher degree attainment. We all know that non-traditional students are negatively being impacted by their own circumstances in persisting and in completing their degree program that they start. So this attrition among non-traditional students is a huge problem in higher education, especially that 73% of higher education by the year of 2020 will be non-traditional students. At some point in higher education, non-traditional students were only the students who would end up in career vocational schools, but not anymore. The demographic has changed, and you can even see them on traditional research universities. And it has schools, universities are doing their best to increase their retention rate. As you know, it is also a problem here for us. For this presentation, I was looking at chain of response model for adults as a learner. It's a theory that was researched by Cross in 1981. And what she does is that she highlights how individuals, adult learners, respond to internal and external variables associated with their participation in learning activities. So there are 5 variables internally and externally that affect adult learners in their participation of learning activities. But something about these variables is that the first variable is educational attitude. What it is that educational attitude, adult learners, their self-perception, their perception of their own abilities, learning abilities, will impact their decision-making for participating in a learning activity. That perception also influences their goals and values and their decision whether or not they can pursue a degree in their life, if they can pursue education in their life. The other one is assessment of ability to succeed. Again, I think one of you also mentioned that, Dr. Bogarty mentioned that low self-esteem and low self-confidence is one of the factors that usually these learners, adult learners, are always concerned about, and they double think, they can't trust their learning ability. Life phase or timing, that's also one of the variables that usually impact their decision making as to whether or not it's a good time for them to pursue a degree. And access to information. Sometimes they are so busy with life, with work, with family, with their involvement in the society that they can't, that they don't have time to think about pursuing a degree. Cross also identifies 3 types of barriers for these students, for adult learners. These barriers are situational barriers, institutional barriers, and dispositional or behavioral barriers. Situational barriers, I am sure that these seem to be familiar for you. Employment. They are torn between being an employee and being a full-time student or part-time student. And also lack of time. When I was at academic advisor in student services, lack of time was one of the most common reasons for students not to submit assignment. I mean, you know, the first response to the question about, oh, you missed 2 or 3 of your assignments last week, the response was, I don't have time, I couldn't do it, I am working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Family obligations. They have family obligations. It has to do with their financial constraints and financial dependence. They are responsible for their family, for their children, for their parents. Civic involvement, they have involvement outside responsibilities within community, and it's difficult for them to balance work and school. I experienced it myself. Very difficult to balance being a full-time employee, part-time employee, and the full-time or part-time student. Transportation issues. Believe it or not, this is one of the things that we used to hear a lot in student services. I had a student, I was telling Norbert yesterday that we had a student that he needed a course to satisfy his degree requirement, but the course was offered at night, and he said, there's no way I can take it because I don't know how to go home at night. I mean, I can ask someone to bring me to school, but how am I supposed to go home at 10:30, 11 at night? So transportation is an issue, physical and mental disabilities, and geographic location and distance are among situational barriers. Institutional barriers. Before I start about institutional barriers, do you have any experience with a student that there was a problem with student, but then we did not have a solid, good, supportive infrastructure to support the student? Do you have a story to share before I start going over?
I had a
over
really
this
good
slide?
student, and they were very dedicated, but they could not get financial aid because of their situation. And then they had told them that they could get financial aid, so they took a few classes, and all of a sudden they couldn't get the financial aid, so it was kind of a waste of their time. I mean, they
Absolutely.
took the classes and they learned something, but
Mhm.
still it was difficult for them.
As you can remember, first generation students as a subcategory of this non-traditional students, and one of the challenges of first generation student is lack of ability to understand what it means to be a student, what it means to go to college, what it means to commit to an educational responsibility. Difficulty navigating institution, not knowing where to go and how to seek help. Sometimes seeking help is, especially among African American and Hispanic students, is a stigma that I am not going into the advising center to ask help because the minute they look at me, they know that, oh, another student who is having issue is the student who is. So I'm familiar with campus culture. You know, I'm not sure whether we've been able to institute a culture and then communicate it to our students. I'm familiar with policies and procedures. You know, usually we are holding students accountable to policies and procedures that they are not aware of. For example, let's say attendance policy for an instructor. When the attendance policy is not communicated to the student, how can we hold the student accountable to regular attendance in a ground-based class? Lack of post-secondary information. This is what I mentioned about first-generation students. It's very common among them because usually the parents never had a chance, never went to college, and never instilled the idea of being a student into their life, which is why it's very difficult. It's new for them. Lack of faculty-student interaction, lack of office hours, lack of faculty advising, and inconvenient office hours sometimes. It's difficult for a student either to find the instructor outside the classroom, or the office hours are inconvenient for the students. Dispositional barriers, or the barriers that have to do with the student. Fear over learning abilities. Low self-confidence, not trusting themselves, not trusting their ability. Age concerns, so this is very common among the students who are older than their peers. Anxiety over fitting in with young students. Difficulty adjusting. Negative past educational experience also has a negative impact on their perception and on their experience. Feel hopeless about future educational success. Again, it has to do with their low self-confidence and fear of failure. Strategies to break down barriers. When I was putting this presentation together, I was telling myself, okay, so it's been a long time we are talking about all of this. We know who our population is. We know what their challenges are. But what are we doing? Are we doing anything to address any of those strategies? So before I go over the strategies that are recommended to break down those barriers, situational, institutional, or dispositional, what do you think? as the faculty member, the most important integral part of this community, what do you think we should do to address these barriers?
I think
Communication between student and instructor.
Communication between instructor and the student.
Open communication.
Open
They have to be
communication.
Not afraid to talk to you.
Not okay. Create a safer space for the student to open up, to talk about their concerns. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. That's the most, it's more important than programs and hours and, that's the most important thing, and everything else is secondary. You can refer people to other things, but if you only refer them and you never communicate one-on-one with them, it really doesn't mean anything, and that would actually be a negative.
What I'll usually do with low self-esteem students is relate to a previous experience with a student who succeeded. So I've been around long enough that I've talked to a lot of students when they have low self-esteem on technology or what have you. And I'll usually relate to a story of a girl I have, I don't remember her name. She came to me literally crying before the midterm in one of my classes saying, I don't think I can pass your test. And I said, well, you have a weekend to study. It's the material in the class, you just need to go home, buckle down, and do your best at it. And I said, you know, you can drop my class if you want, but that's not going to be any good if you want to get ahead in this career, and is this really what you want to do? And she said, yeah. So she went home that weekend and came back, and she got 100 on that midterm by studying the material. Not only that, she actually turned in all the assignments and got 100 on the final, and got 1,000 points or 100 points in that class. And she was crying right before the midterm. And any other student I ever have that comes to me with a problem, I usually relate that story to them. And they're usually like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. You know, and if they're motivated to go forward. So it's good to bring your previous experience with students and let the students know that they're not in this alone.
They're not in the zone. That is true. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
It also helps with, you know, that list of issues that identifies the typical student that you experience and live over more than half personally.
Exactly.
And so when I
being
do
able
the
to relate
introduction,
to those students with your personal experiences.
so it helps when you say things in your introduction that identifies you as having something common with students, and so that helps open up the communication area.
So open communication, being able to motivate the student, relating to the student through personal experiences. And that goes back to what we were discussing, Bruce, yesterday, the ARC theory. Maybe you could talk about it. I think this is it's kind of related to this discussion that the faculty can use, paying attention to the student, giving confidence to the student, providing relevant materials to the classroom, understand the students' learning styles, as Bill mentioned in his introduction, are extremely important to break down the barriers. For situational barriers, remember the situational barriers? Do you remember them? What they were? Employment,
Transportation.
family responsibilities. In order to break down situational barriers, it is recommended that the institution assist non-traditional students with degree audit mapping and plans of study. That is something that we've been doing in the student services, and we've been doing it not with the purpose of assisting non-traditional students, but it's because of the way we schedule students. But then that was something that I was always thinking about, why do we not allow the students to schedule themselves? But it seems that non-traditional students have difficulties finding the right courses. So maybe scheduling the students in one-on-one session is a good idea, because this way academic advisor can go over the degree audit and kind of give the broader picture of what the student is going to experience throughout the program. develop early warning systems to identify at-risk students, and that is our weak area. And that is because our student information system that we are using, obviously, we have not been able to provide training for the faculty. And that's why the faculty have all the interaction with students. And since you are the first person who usually finds out about the problems, unfortunately, we never get to hear about those problems. Although I have heard from some of the faculties that they put notes in Campus Cafe, but unless you email the academic advisor and let them know that, I put a note for Sarah, she was late last night, there's no way the academic advisors can find out about the note that you put in Campus Cafe. So that's one of the areas that hopefully with the shared advising model we will be able to address. Yes?
Sir, and I think we're the first person, if we're lucky, and I think what happens is a lot of students, they get discouraged and disheartened, they disappear. And a number of students, I've tried, emailed them, called them, whatever, never heard back.
Mm-hmm.
Never did know what exactly the problem was, but I think it's related.
Yes. Offer workshops to help students with the stress and time management, organization and resource identification. Time management, note-taking, stress management, test-taking skills, confidence, workshops on confidence, they really help them. They help them to figure out the areas that they are weak. Connect non-traditional students with financial aid information. Offer on-site daycare or transportation services. That is something that we should consider. I believe I had a conversation yesterday with Norbert about maybe if we could provide shuttles to students, the ones who come at night and don't have any transportation. You know, that's an idea.
I heard the buses stop running before class is over at night.
So maybe we could allow the students to leave the class earlier, but then how is it going to impact the student learning and the contact hours that they have to make? So again, that's open for discussion. Offer flexible degree programs, block scheduling, virtual learning, mixed mode, video streaming. And I'm really happy that Bill mentioned it in his introduction that in this training session you are going to learn about offering different ways of learning styles. Institutional barriers. Increase opportunities for non-traditional students to connect with faculty and staff. Create bridge or mentoring programs for transfer students. So if you have a transfer student who is bringing 24, 25, 50 units, then we need to find a way to help that student to fit in, to find connections, to make connections with faculty and students in his or her cohort. Strengthen and centralize student support services. Offer transfer student success workshops during the evening. And that's one of the things, this item is one of the items that was also mentioned in the situational, in strategies for decreasing situational barriers. Help non-traditional students identify on-campus resources and opportunities. Develop a strong advising program. One of the things that we are planning to do is that we are going to collaborate with faculty on student advising, where the faculty provides student advising regarding academic related issues, where we in the student services provide advising on non-academic issues. Dispositional barriers, enhance faculty and staff knowledge over non-traditional students' perspectives, complex lives and needs. Mix undergraduate teaching methods with pedagogy methods. Increase practical and applied learning modalities in the classroom, different types of learning modalities. Strengthen vocational and career counseling. Inspire them. Give them the picture that they are going to the picture of the life that they are going to have after completing the degree, and also helping them finding internships and potential career opportunities. develop programs offering cohort student learning communities. And this is really good. We can do this because the way we schedule the students, it is easy for us to put students in learning communities where a group of the students take classes with each other, meet weekly, learn together, do assignments together. So that is something that we should definitely consider, and also involve families in the educational experience. Although we have older students, they are older than 25, but still we can have events where they can bring their children, they can bring their wives, they can bring their parents to create connection, and also to feel proud of their families. Final thoughts. We need to be an advocate. So Tom Byrne is chairing the committee, and what did you call your committee?
It's still going through the name, but it's on boarding committee this week.
Yes, the purpose of that committee, the purpose of it is to be an advocate for the student. I mean, that's the core of a student-centric culture, to be an advocate for the student. I had a conversation with Bruce yesterday. Even in the student services, we need to change the way we communicate with the students. We had sent an email to a student for official transcript, and the email was so dried, and it didn't have anything nice in it. You know, it was just very mechanical. If you don't bring your transcript, I'm going to drop you. Da, da, da. So, you know, being advocate, being on the student side is the core of a student-centric culture. Awareness, bringing awareness, providing awareness, letting everybody know what the barriers are and what the strategies we can utilize to break down those barriers. Attention toward improving and creating federal, state, institutional policies that support non-traditional student success. And also, we need a comprehensive change. We need a cultural change. Oftentimes, I hear that we're not enrolling good students. We need to change the way we are enrolling students. We need to recruit good students. There's actually nothing as good and bad students. They are students, and we need to take a step to meet them, to meet their needs. Focus on strengthening non-academic support services, increasing diverse learning methods, and enhancing instructional approaches. So these are the final thoughts for this presentation. I'm sorry if it was too long, but I really thank Bill for giving me this opportunity to share with you the area that I have a lot of passion for. Yes?
How's Coleman's orientation, is that working?
It is not working. Thank you. I love that question. It is not working, and we're planning to change it. Faculty absolutely doesn't have any role in orientation, and we don't like that. We want to involve faculty in orientation. We are going to have a meeting with Tom tomorrow, and Tom and Bruce tomorrow. What we are going to discuss is the manner in which we're going to involve faculty, because we want to, because you're the ones who are going to motivate the students, inspire the students, especially during orientation, setting that academic tone. So if you would like to join us on Thursday at 1:30, please come to the meeting, because we are going to discuss extended academic orientation.
Just as a food of thought, you know, the programmatic assessment process from the Department of Education says you have things that introduce, and you have things that reinforce, and you have things that assess the student's assessment. From taking that thought into orientation, student orientation, I think a orientation period for the new students is great for introducing them to the educational concept. But what a lot of institutions don't think about is, how about a midterm, a mid-program assessment, where you get these students, says, okay, what have you experienced in the past that we can, going forward, and make better? And then, at the end, just before they graduate, an hour or two, says, okay, to help us do better, what would you suggest if you're now in a position of making suggestions of how we can make the programs better that you've experienced in the last 2 years of your program? So 3 times meeting for new students, that's worked in the past for me. It would probably be a good idea for Coleman to.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea. Can you join us tomorrow? Now you're in trouble. Can you join us tomorrow in 1:30 meeting?
I'm busy fishing.
Okay. All right, so maybe.
But
I
you
could
can
call
join
you.
him.
Maybe I could call you, and maybe we could have a phone conference with you to go over this fabulous idea that you have. Questions? Let's reflect on all of the things that I talked about, and you have experienced as a faculty member. And then share your reflection with me, with us.
Well, the last thing you said on the slide, I really like, you don't look for good students or bad students. And related to that, there was a class at accounting. It took me 1.5 years for me to get them to change the title. They had the title Dealing with Difficult People. Well, there aren't really difficult people. There are people who, because of different circumstances or personality, whatever, it may be difficult to serve them, to work with them, but they're not it's not like that's their main characteristic in life. And it's the same as we have students who have some issues. They're not good or bad people. They present some challenges, and we need to focus on the challenge, not on getting rid of that person and getting a better one.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes.
The way I see our students when they come in is they want to improve their life or they wouldn't be here. So you have to take that at face value. I mean, they're not good or bad, just like you said. They came here for a reason, so we want to do our best job.
Thank you.
Dominic and Robert, I love what you just said, because it's a cultural change for us. The difficulty is our challenge, not them. It's our challenge to deal with whatever it is that makes them difficult to work with, but not them as a person being at fault. If you flip that around and look at it from that angle, it makes it a lot easier to deal with, I know, the frustration that faculty sometimes has with dealing with non-traditional students. Really good points.
There's one key word to remember: empathy. You have to have an empathetic attitude in dealing with these students.
To be able to put
How many of you were non-traditional students? Almost
good,
all
so
of
we
us
can relate.
were non-traditional students at some point or another, all right? So just think back to when you were a student. How did you want to be treated? How did you want to be taught? How did you want to interact with your faculty? And then treat our students the same.
Thank you.
If